On any given day, paramedics are asked to walk straight into chaos, heart attacks, car wrecks, and everything in between. For Aaron Westfall, those calls too often involve the painful grip of addiction. But instead of only seeing tragedy, he's made it his mission to see the person behind the struggle.
I don't look at that person as an addict. That's a human. That's a beating heart.
After all, substance use disorder is something Aaron knows firsthand. But his story doesn't stop there. From surviving brain cancer and abuse to mourning the devastating loss of the person he loved the most as a child, his life has been marked by pain most people can hardly imagine.
I remember many times my mom putting herself over top of me to protect from my dad's, wrath. And then when she was gone, that was no longer there.
Hear how Aaron turned unthinkable hardships into strength and resilience, and what he wants you to know about addiction from his perspective as a paramedic. That's coming up on this episode of Grieving Out Loud. I'm your host, Angela Kennecke. Let's start the conversation. Aaron, welcome to Grieving Out Loud. I want to say first that I am so grateful that you contacted me. And when I heard a little bit of your story, I was like, oh, we have to talk because it is so compelling. And I'm so glad that you're here with us and doing the work that you do. But I really want to go back in time because your childhood you were off to a rocky start.
Yeah, that's a good word for it, rocky. Yeah. So I grew up in the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia. I grew up in the state foster care system. At 5 years old, my mom passed away of leukemia, and my father just wasn't ready to be a father per se. I somehow got the blame for my mother's death in his mind.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So had I not been born, she wouldn't have gotten sick and passed away. So in his mind, he directed all of his anger toward me. So I, began to bear the brunt of his frustrations, of his, anger of losing his wife and the mother to his children. I was the baby of 5 kids and pretty much the last one left in the home. I had an older brother. He was 17, kind of in and out, but I was the last one there. So I caught hell.
And abuse, you're talking about abuse, and you ended up in foster care, feeling unwanted, unloved probably, and you're dealing with grief and horrible loss. It's so difficult for any child to lose their mother.
I remember many times my mom putting herself over top of me to protect from my dad's, wrath. And then when she was gone, that was no longer there. Up until my mom passed, she passed in the hospital, but the week before they took her to the hospital, she slept in bed with me every night. And that was her biggest worry, was what was going to happen to me. I don't know that it panned out the way she thought it was going to pan out, but at the time I didn't see foster care as a blessing, but it was the best thing for me.
Right. So your mother wasn't wrong. She wasn't wrong in her assessment of what was going to happen, but foster care as a blessing. Explain that to me.
I come from siblings who don't have high school educations, never stepped foot outside of the state of West Virginia, never traveled. In foster care, I've traveled abroad. I was able to finish high school. I got my college education taken care of. So even though I kind of got off on some terrible paths for a little bit, it set a trajectory for my life a little bit differently than what I would have had. I would still be sitting in my hometown, likely working some very dead-end job.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. And there is something good that could come out of bad. Even horrible situations, right? Sometimes good can come out.
And not all the foster homes were good,
Right.
I had some speckled bad with some speckled good, but thankfully the good outweighed the bad.
But, I'm thinking the idea of being unwanted or unloved, and then the grief of losing your mother, all of those things really do set someone up for substance use disorder, especially grief. I had a grief expert tell me on this podcast that at the root of most addictions is grief.
Yep. I didn't learn how to deal with it. It was that thing would just shove it down, shove it down, shove it down. And then when I was 13, I was placed in a psychiatric facility for a little while because all that had come to a head and it bubbled over and I could no longer shove it down. But even then, there was trauma workshops and things that I attended for things that had occurred to me, but nobody went back to the root of the death of my mother and losing that one person that was steadfast in my life.
Yeah, I am so sorry for that loss and for everything that you went through following that. And really, it was almost the perfect storm in your life because you had gone through all these adverse childhood experiences. And we know the higher your score, the more likely you are to have not only mental health issues, but also addiction, substance use issues.
Correct.
But also you were in the perfect location for that as well in West Virginia, really the epicenter of the opioid crisis.
Yeah, we've had multiple visits from different setting presidents just because it is so bad there.
And how did that impact you? What was your first exposure to substances?
Ironically, I kind of got addicted to opioids a little bit later per se in life. It was my mid-20s.
Really?
Yeah. I'd already attended school, graduated high school, gone through college, skated through, didn't get addicted to anything, didn't play with anything either.
Then came another fight Aaron never expected. Doctors diagnosed him with brain cancer, not once, but twice. The first time was when he was 17, and doctors surgically removed the tumor. The second time, he was 23 and given opioids to deal with pain. So you have survived brain cancer twice, and you've survived it now for more than 20 years?
Yeah, I have a current mass that they found a year and a half ago that is inoperable. I've chosen just to leave things as it is and enjoy life, whether it's malignant or not, or needs treatment, it's inoperable, and I don't want to go down that road again. So I'm just going to just ride.
But clearly, you must have needed the opioids for pain.
Initially, Angela, no. I never complained of pain.
They were just written out to you, just given to you.
Yeah, because of where I lived, and then obviously going into chemo and radiation, it would assume that I would have pain. And while I had headaches, I didn't have anything that I needed to take something, around the clock. And my first prescription was oxycodone right off the bat. And it was written for me to take it 3 times a day. You know where that led. That's why we're here.
That's basically heroin in a pill. Like many others prescribed OxyContin, Aaron quickly developed an addiction. When his prescription ran out, he turned to the streets in search of heroin.
So when the opioid epidemic really exploded in West Virginia, unless you were terminal on hospice or in the hospitals, they pretty much cut everybody's prescriptions off. The pharmaceutical companies realized kind of what they'd done. Physicians were, losing their licenses. There was all kinds of things. We were seeing what we call pill mills, where they were, after hours physicians just writing prescriptions. Those were being raided. So everybody kind of lost their prescription. That's when it transitioned to heroin for me.
Yeah. And I know that this is just the progression that so many people went from that to heroin. And then pretty soon heroin isn't available now today. People just get fentanyl.
Yeah. I am so thankful I'm not in that world or under that addiction anymore. Still an addict. I believe once an addict, always an addict. I just have to change my behaviors.
But before finding recovery, Aaron faced a couple of near-death experiences, one intentional, the other accidental.
My unintentional overdose was I bought what they called a green monster. It was supposed to be a fentanyl pill, or what they called a Roxy or a blueberry. There's all kinds of street names for it. But coming to find out, it was a pressed pill called a green monster. And it was one that I had used by snorting and had a friend with me, thankfully. I went completely unresponsive. And by the time EMS got on scene, I had to be intubated and then was, kept in the hospital for a few days. And come to find out it was fentanyl and PCP, or angel dust.
Are you ready to protect the next generation from the dangers of substance use? Emily's Hope has created a comprehensive K-12 substance use prevention curriculum designed to educate, empower, and equip students with the tools they need to make healthy choices. Our age-appropriate lessons start in kindergarten and build through high school, using science, real stories, and interactive learning to help kids understand their bodies, brains, and risk of drug use. We're already reaching thousands of students across multiple states, and we're just getting started. Visit emilyshopeedu.org to learn more and share our curriculum with your school administrators and counselors. At Emily's Hope, we believe prevention begins with education. Let's work together to keep our kids safe. In addition to battling substance use disorder, Aaron also struggled with his mental health. And the two often go hand in hand. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, about half of the people with mental health disorders will also face substance use disorder. For many, drug and alcohol problems start as self-medication, using substances to cope with stress, anxiety, or depression. But then, the substance actually makes the mental health condition worse.
I had dealt with my sexuality all my life, being a gay man, growing up where I did, and the family that raised me, very religious, not accepting. So after my divorce, I knew I couldn't come out. So my alternative was to end my life to avoid that. I spent 10 days on a ventilator in ICU, about an hour and a half worth of CPR, was shocked 3 times. Because the paramedics there knew me, they worked very hard to get me back.
Yeah, thank goodness. But I understand what you're saying, because I am aware that the rate of substance use disorder and suicide is so much higher among LGBTQ plus community, people in that community. And it is because of the lack of acceptance, the lack of connection, all that goes along with that. And in today's world, that seems to be really magnified. I worry a lot about that.
Yeah. Thankfully, through therapy and self-acceptance, I think that's the first thing. You have to learn to accept who you are and accept yourself. I don't have an issue, per se, with people, not feeling accepted. My colleagues and my friends, I've kind of got a circle around me that I don't struggle with that today, but it is a very big problem with those, first coming out of the closet, so to speak, or with families who are not accepting.
Even through many of his struggles, Aaron managed to keep a job. He first got involved in emergency medical services at just 18, starting as an EMT before moving on to paramedic school.
Sad to say that while I was working on the ambulance, I was in active addiction. I'm out helping people, but I had this demon.
It was a secret.
Yep. Never went to work under the influence, nothing like that. And then at the end of my addiction, I'd actually quit work for a little while. Life was just a mess, and I was not a good human. So it was not a good place for me. So I'd quit work for a while.
Did you ever get in trouble?
I did not. Like I said, I never used on the job, never came to work under the influence. So no, it never landed me in trouble. My license were never investigated, anything like that.
What made you get into recovery?
I hit rock bottom. I had nowhere to go. I was getting tough love from my family, those who I call my family per se. There was no more couch surfing. There was no more places to stay. And quite frankly, I was just tired of it. It's an everyday battle. The first thing you have to do when you get up in the morning is find that fix, or your day's ruined. I knew that this wasn't sustainable anymore.
So you just came to that realization.
Yep.
And was there a certain program, or did you seek medication?
I did medication-assisted therapy. So I am a big proponent of Suboxone, and people use buprenorphine.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute, because we know medically that is the preferred method of care.
Mhm.
It works. It keeps
It does.
people alive. It's no different than having someone with diabetes take insulin or having someone with heart disease take a heart medication.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But there's so much stigma.
There's a major stigma in the recovery circles that you're not clean. A lot of your recovery circles only use abstinence-based programs. And I'm sorry to say those don't work. They work for some.
Right. And right now there's a threat to federal funding for medications for opioid use disorder.
They work for some, but I did not use Suboxone for a long period of time. I used it as a gradual step-down program. But I will tell you, to this day, I have a prescription in my name available for me at any time, because I don't ever want to be in a position where that craving kicks up, or, that I don't have something to quiet that down.
Tell me about how Suboxone or buprenorphine helped you in those early stages of recovery.
When you initially start to begin to withdraw, your first few things are the goose flush skin, the chills, your nose runs, your eyes water, you can't eat, you're nauseous, best be close to a bathroom because you're going to vomit, diarrhea, and it stops all of that. There is no high. I've never once felt a high from it. I've never had a change, or what they call the head change with drugs. I feel normal, and it eliminates all of that withdrawal feeling to where I don't have to go seek out that substance in order to quiet that withdrawal.
Here on Grieving Out Loud, we've heard from many people who credit medication-assisted treatment, or medications for opioid use disorder, with helping them turn their lives around. One of them is Megan, who grew up on a family farm outside a small South Dakota town, living what she described as a normal life until she was introduced to OxyContin. Here's just a glimpse into her story.
There was a tray with white powder on it, and I was like, what is that? Is that cocaine? And they're like, no, have you heard of OxyContin? They were like, oh yeah, we just crush it up and snort it. And I tried it, and it was really game over from there. I'll never forget the night where I didn't have one. I woke up like it was like a puddle of sweat, and I was like restless legs, feeling just horrible. That's when I knew I was addicted to this. All my friends had graduated to heroin. So that's when I started using heroin. So you feel like you're like on clouds, you're feeling great. When you're coming down from it, you don't ever want to feel that way. So that's how you get sucked in. You're selling things because you don't have money, you can't hold a job. Anytime I would get a job, I would be sick. And then I finally started injecting it. Then you get addicted to the needle. It's a constant just circle and addiction. And then I just lost everything, and I didn't have anywhere to go. Then I found out I was pregnant. I need to change my life. I had a doctor say, do you think it's time for the Suboxone? And he introduced me to it. I was kind of nervous at first, right? Like, I'm going to get off of heroin and this is going to help me? Like, how? It is safe to take throughout your pregnancy. Actually, my doctor who prescribed me the Suboxone, she was an OBGYN too. So she walked along with me that whole time. How it works is it's an opiate blocker. So if I would try to use opiates, it would block it, which is great. Also helps take away that urge to use. So that's been really helpful to me as well. I just feel like it's just a medication that is something that I need to be on. It's just kind of like if you have diabetes, you need insulin. So I started taking Suboxone 5 years ago. I was taking a little bit over 8 milligrams. After a couple years, then I went down to a 4 milligram, and then now I'm taking 2. It's just really helps me to maintain my sobriety, keeps me sober, and it saved my life. The stigma is huge around it, which is unfortunate. When I go into, the pharmacy even, I've had stigma there. The way they look at you is different. I don't want people to just feel like they can't go on it because they might be treated differently. I don't want people to feel like they can't go on it because, it's another addiction. Go on it. It's going to help you. And it's going to really, save your life and keep you sober.
If you or someone you know is struggling with substance use disorder, please seek help immediately. With fentanyl and other powerful synthetic opioids in the drug supply, there's no time to wait. You can find a list of helpful resources on our website, emilyshope.charity, and we've posted a link in our show notes too.
As one of the nation's strongest financial organizations, First Premier Bank and Premier Bank Card have the strength to do good. We support nearly 700 organizations and nonprofits. Our employees give more than 30,000 volunteer hours annually. And we are continually seeking ways to make South Dakota an even better place to live. It's the Premier way. First Premier Bank and Premier Bank Card.
You probably encounter people on Suboxone every day, working, living their life normally, and you have no idea because they function normal. They're able to have emotion and not feel numb and not have that almost shell-like feeling. You're human again.
Yeah. It is truly a miracle for so many people, and I just wish we could get rid of all of the stigma surrounding it. And there's nothing wrong if you need to be on it for life. Now with these obesity medications, these GLP-1s, they're saying you may need to be on those for life. I mean, it's really no different.
There are now, in my line of work in EMS, there are certain services, not here in South Dakota, a lot on the East Coast, who are now, the paramedics are actually giving buprenorphine after an overdose.
Right.
Yep.
That's what we wanted to do with our post-overdose response team, but we couldn't get our particular ambulance service to do that. I know they do that in New Jersey and some other places, and it makes people feel better.
Where I'm from, they're doing it. It wasn't being done when I was there, though.
Yeah. It makes people feel better so that they're more receptive to help as well.
Yep.
And more receptive to getting into some kind of program and treatment. In addition to medication, Aaron also turned to therapy to address both his substance use disorder and underlying mental health challenges.
100%. I'm alive because of EMDR. It allowed me to walk back guided to things that I'd not dealt with or pushed down as a child and, get through those things that I was carrying that I didn't know I was carrying.
I've heard a lot of, we've had a podcast with a therapist who does EMDR, somebody who started doing it way back in the 80s, the early 90s. Tell me why it worked for you, or explain to people what it is for those listeners who don't know it.
The easiest way I could tell you, I hate the word hypnosis because you're not hypnotized, but they are able to, for lack of better words, almost reach into your psyche and pick out that stuff that you squash down and you try to hide, or you don't remember it because your body blocks it out, and bring that to the forefront, and they guide you through that trauma in a very controlled situation.
Right. And so it really helped for you.
Yep. Honestly, I smelled things. I heard things said to me that was told to me as a child that I couldn't remember, Angela. And these were traumatizing things, were literally holding me captive that I had no idea about.
Well, I am so grateful that you got the true help that you needed.
Yep.
Not everybody gets that or is even
No, they don't.
offered any of these things. And it should just be standard treatment of care for anyone suffering from substance use.
It does take some personal responsibility. I did seek some of it out. I'm kind of inquisitive by nature. So when at the beginning of my recovery, I looked for things to help. And, EMDR kept popping up and medication-assisted therapies kept popping up. And these were popping up too often for them not to be successful. So I sought them out.
Yeah. And what made you leave West Virginia?
I actually left West Virginia during COVID. Came out to South Dakota. Initially, I was out in Pierre working COVID relief medical. I was out there for 2 years, left. I went to Chicago for a year. And then opportunity came here in Sioux Falls, and I came back.
And you're working as a paramedic.
Yeah, I'm a paramedic here in Sioux Falls.
And tell me what you see on the front lines here. Do you see people being revived by naloxone? Because I think I want to paint this picture for people. People see Sioux Falls as, kind of a quiet Midwestern community, not a lot going on. We're a flyover stage,
Sure.
But the opioid crisis is here.
Come talk to your first responders. Talk to your firemen or your volunteer firemen, your paramedics. Talk to the police officers, those in your family or that you're close to. Overdoses, a lot of substance abuse. I will tell you, I've never seen more alcohol in one area in my life. And it's children, it's young adults, it's, older adults. Then you have your meth, your opioids, your hallucinogens. It's all here.
How many people are surviving overdoses that you see?
More so than there was. Law enforcement has naloxone, fire department has naloxone. Through Emily's Hope, you guys are getting it into people's hands. More people are surviving now than they were.
Yeah, thank goodness. I mean, that's our effort. That's really our hope and our wish is to help people survive so families don't have to experience these losses, but we also want people to get help. I mean, that's the thing.
But my one fear is with, naloxone, and I don't know if you've talked about this with other people, but the amount of fentanyl or the concentration of fentanyl that we're seeing, you might have one dose of 4 milligram intranasal Narcan and think that's your safety net, that I can use this drug. And I can tell you from a professional experience and from being an addict, 4 milligrams may not turn you around in an overdose. Sometimes it takes 8 milligrams, 12 milligrams before we start seeing you come back around. And then we only have a very short window of time to get you to help before that medication is wearing off and that opioid takes back over.
Right. And I don't think people necessarily understand that. You explained it very, very well.
Yeah. People think just because I have one box of Narcan, I'm okay to use drugs. And I don't want to paint that picture that you're not. You're not safe. You don't know what those are. You don't know what else is in there. So just because you have Narcan, please don't think you can use drugs.
And that's why it's important also that if a bystander uses naloxone on somebody, that they call for help immediately because it can wear off and they may not have enough doses on them. If you have a kit like we give out, it's 2 doses. Maybe somebody has a couple of kits, hopefully.
Yep.
But you need to have more than 1 dose and you need to make sure to call for help because it will wear off.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And what do you bring to the table as a paramedic who has suffered from an opioid use disorder and now you are out on the streets, in recovery, helping people? You've got to be bringing something different to the table than other paramedics.
Compassion, kindness, and understanding. I'm very, very vocal about my addiction, what I was addicted to, how long I've been clean. I don't look at that person as an addict. That's a human. That's a beating heart. And I can tell you from experience, another addict knows another addict. Angela, you could sit and tell somebody, oh, I understand what you're going through. Because you haven't experienced it, you don't. I know what they feel. I know that fear that, takes over your entire body when Narcan is deployed on you. I know the sickness you're getting ready to face. I know the steps that are going to happen. So it also helps me mitigate those, that I'm prepared. When I give Narcan, I've got antiemetics or nausea medication ready to come up right behind it. I know that they could possibly have a seizure. I'm prepared to treat that. So because I've lived it and I also take care of it, I feel like I've got a little bit more edge on taking care of these people.
I bet you do. Have you had any pushback for being so public with your story?
Oh, 100%. People think when you don a uniform, albeit, police, EMS, or fire, that we are these people who have never had life happen to us. And we are. And I think being more real makes us more relatable. It kind of removes that stigma of that we're unapproachable. I've had other medics and other EMTs pull me aside and say, you shouldn't say that, or you shouldn't share that. I'm going to do it anyway.
Good for you. Yeah. I'm so happy that you are, because it will help so many people. Staying silent about these things. It's just like with my daughter's death. I could have lived in the shadow of shame because my daughter died from fentanyl poisoning. I certainly could have hid it, tried to skirt around it. But what good would that have done for the world? I wouldn't have brought her back, and I wouldn't have helped a single person. Your life experience has taught you something. Therefore, you can help other people.
Correct. While Emily may not be present with you today, you're carrying that legacy, and I'm never met the girl, but I can guarantee she'd be proud of the work her mom's doing.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate that sentiment. And I am so grateful for the work that you're doing and that you're talking about it and that you're helping people and that you're in this role to save lives, but not only can you save their life, but you can even steer them into the direction of recovery because you've been there.
Yep. I'm not afraid to have that conversation. I've had it many times in the back of an ambulance. Are you ready to get clean? Can we get you in a bed? I've given out my cell phone number to people. Hey, you're thinking about using, you don't have another out, call me. I don't care if I'm on duty, off duty. I'll come get you. I'll get you out of that situation. I don't know these people from Adam, but that's just something I need to do.
Yeah. And I think you're right. It's easy for society to dismiss people who are suffering from substance use disorder as almost like non-human. Like, oh, you're just doing this bad thing and we don't care about you and you're dispensable. We can just get rid of you. It doesn't matter if you die. And too often we hear that attitude from, we have a lot of compassionate people in law enforcement, but there are those who aren't. Right. And I'm sure in every.
And there's bad paramedics, there's good paramedics, bad firefighters, good So every industry has their people.
Right. Well, thank you for all that you're doing. And what is keeping you in recovery today?
I know where I came from. I know what that felt like. And there's nothing I'm going back to that for. It's just not worth it. I wake up every day. I've got money in the bank. I have a place to live. I'm able to not be sick. There's way too many positives on this side than there is to go back to that side. Do days get hard? Do I have to make sure I'm staying up with therapy and in my job? I see the things nightmares are made out of. So I've got to make sure I'm taking care of my mind so those things don't become heavy. But I love what I do. I love the person that I've become post addiction. And that's my steadfast.
Well, I love that. And I love that you're sharing your story and that you're there to help other people that you see every day on the job. Mm-hmm. And I just want to commend you. And I feel really honored that you're sharing that story with us.
Yeah, I appreciate you allowing me.
Do you have an idea for a podcast episode? We'd love to hear from you. You can find my contact information in the show notes. And while you're there, we would really appreciate it if you take a moment to rate and review this episode. And please share it with your friends and family. Together, we can raise awareness about the opioid epidemic, reduce the stigma surrounding substance use disorder, and hopefully get people the help they so desperately need. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, wishing you faith, hope, and courage. This podcast is produced by Casey Wanenberg King and Kaylee Fitz. Have you lost a loved one to overdose or fentanyl poisoning? I'd like to invite you to share their story on our new Emily's Hope Memorial website called More Than Just a Number. They were our children, siblings, cousins, husbands, wives, aunts, uncles, and friends. So much more than just a number. You can submit a memorial today on morethanjustanumber.org.